The Rangers lost the regular season Silver Boot Series this year again. Well, they did it last year, won the World Series. But this year, doesn't feel like history is going to be repeated.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the World Series champion Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, before I get into this silver boot stinker of a finale, Jacob deGrom maybe coming back too late, and why the Rangers going for it, even after this terribleness since the trade deadline, was still absolutely the right call. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Now, the Rangers once again lost the regular season Silver Boot Series. I'm clarifying because the only postseason Silver Boot Series to ever be had, the Rangers won last year, en route to being the defending World Series champs. But the defending of that title has been pretty bad so far this year. Losing the final game of the series, of the season series that was tied, that had been a very, very close season series all year, a season series the Rangers would have very much liked to have the tiebreaker of, especially since it's looking like whoever wins the AL West is going to be the only AL West team in the playoffs, barring some kind of a big collapse from several AL Central or AL East teams, which not what I think anybody predicted heading into this season. I thought there were going to be 3 AL West teams in the postseason this year, but that is almost certainly not going to be the case unless something really funky and weird happens towards the end of the year. Now, this final game was a frustrating one for the Rangers. They only got 4 innings out of Arena, who had a decent outing. It looked like he might only make it through 2, but he persevered, and this Rangers defense turned some really good ground ball double plays, 3 of them to be specific, all of them Seager to Semien to Lowe, just a day after a couple of missed double plays, though one of them should have been turned, one of them would have been a little bit more difficult. Both of those double plays combined to lead to 3 of the 4 Houston runs scored in that 4-2 loss the day before. This time, the Rangers were able to keep themselves from, their defense costing them many runs, but the pitching staff was just not quite what it was in the days before. Mainly Jose Leclerc giving up 3 runs at the most inopportune time. An extra run from Brock Burke, but you get 5 innings out of your bullpen, the A side of your bullpen, the rested A side that had that full day off, which granted it was a full day off and then you're pitching on a day game, but still that bullpen gets you 5 innings and 4 runs. It's not ideal. It's not good enough. This offense wasn't great, but it was good enough to at least keep you in it. But the bullpen, the thing that had been one of the mainstays, the stabilizing factors of this team, falling apart in a big moment. As many of these things that have gone right for the Rangers, they haven't been able to keep everything good at the same time. When the offense is good, the starting pitching starts to fall off. When the starting pitching and the offense is doing well, the bullpen starts to fall off. When the offense and the bullpen are doing well, that's when the starting pitching starts to taper off. It's just been one thing after another with this team, just not able to kick it into gear. And after that walk-off home run in a game that was incredibly hard fought on Monday, you thought this is the spark that needs to light this team. This is finally the thing that they've been looking for all season long, to finally spark that. You thought maybe that was it with the 5-game winning streak. Granted, 4 of them were against the White Sox amidst a horrendous 21-game losing streak, but you didn't know that at the time. And granted, 4 of those 5 wins were the one-run variety, but you just had to win, and the Rangers were doing that. And then they stopped doing that, and they kept stopping doing that. And then things have just gotten even worse in August in a series you desperately needed. The Rangers aren't completely out of it. I'm not sticking a fork in this team just yet, but I'm sticking something in this team. Maybe a spork, maybe a stick, just poking it, saying, "Hey, you there? You alive? You still with us, buddy?" The answer is maybe. Probably not, but maybe. This team has 47 games left. They are 9.5 games back for the final wild card spot. They are 5.5 back from the now AL West leading Houston Astros because the Mariners have fallen off a little bit. That's just the last thing the Rangers want. If the Rangers are going to miss the playoffs, then I'm sure they would not want to see the Astros. I'm sure they don't want to see anybody else in their division in the playoffs, but mathematically, per the rules of Major League Baseball, one of these teams has to be in the playoffs. But not the Astros, ideally. But that's where they are. That's where the Rangers let them. The Astros were not, playing their most inspired baseball heading into this weekend, or heading into this midweek series, but alas, it was still enough to beat these Rangers. It is a frustrating thing to watch at this point. And I have kind of emotionally gotten myself to a similar point as to where I was last year, mainly after Game 5 of the ALCS, where sitting there watching Game 6, I'm not quite as devastated as I was after, Game 5 of the ALCS, after Jose Altuve hit that go-ahead homer, and it felt like, oh, God, the Rangers need to win 2 games. They need to win all the games in Houston to win this ALCS, which we all know how that went. But watching that Game 6 with the absolute least emotion I think I've ever watched a Texas Rangers baseball game, that's kind of about where I've gotten myself to for the rest of this year. It's like, okay, well, they gave it a shot, and a lot of things very much did not go right for this team. I mean, Max Scherzer's, apparent possible return early, then nerve issue, then come back and look decent, and then immediately go back on the IL about a couple of days after saying, I'm not going to need an IL trip. And then earlier that week, you lose John Gray before he throws a pitch in Toronto, and you trade away another rotation piece, and the rotation looks like it's an absolute mess. You missed most of the season for Josh Young. You can't even really fully enjoy the Josh Smith breakout, though. You can at least enjoy it a little bit. I definitely have, and I think it's a huge, huge thing for this team moving forward, Josh Smith's breakout year. That is no small thing for the squad moving forward, but you can't even really fully enjoy Kirby Yates pulling him out of absolutely nowhere. That, for me, might be the most frustrating part of if this season ends up in the stinker, which I did say this month of August was going to be do or die time for the Rangers, and, well, die is one of those options, and it's what they have been doing in August. But not getting to see Kirby Yates go out there and go nuclear in a postseason series, maybe the Rangers will end up getting him back on another one-year deal. I doubt it's going to be for $4.5 million with how well he's pitched this year. I'm sure at least one other team will be inquiring about his services as a free agent at the end of this year. Who knows what's going to happen with Nate Eovaldi and his contract. I mean, if he hits 156 innings this year, then he has a player option for next year for $20 million. I don't think he's going to get $20 million on the free market, but maybe he does. Or maybe he just takes that player option and wants to come back. I think the Rangers would very much like him back and need him back if they're going to compete in 2025. But this is just kind of what this team is right now. When someone tells you who they are, when they show you who they are, believe them. And unfortunately for the 2024 Rangers, what they have showed us all year long is that they are not the 2023 Rangers. They are not the team that hits other teams into oblivion. They are not the team that has the most shaky bullpen ever. They're not the team whose rotation is unpredictable and mostly bad. But unfortunately, they are also probably not the team that is winning a World Series that nobody saw coming. This show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best way to get tickets for all the MLB games you want, because Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. They got prices on Game Time that actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. They are seriously the best way to get tickets I have ever found. It is so easy, it is so convenient, and with their all-in pricing, you can see up front exactly how much the tickets are going to cost, what it's going to look like from your seat, and you get the best deals as well. Everything you want from buying tickets is on Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, I'll be doing a crossover with Stacy of Locked On Yankees, talking about this weekend series in the Bronx. Two teams very much going for it this year. Very much different vibes. The Rangers take on the Yankees. You can catch every pitch of the hometown broadcast on SiriusXM or on the SXM app. Now, it's kind of hard to believe this is the same team that won the World Series last year. I mean, not the exact same roster, but pretty much the same roster. I mean, the only real missing pieces are, well, Mitch Garver, who's also not having a great season in Seattle. I talked about him and the fan abuse that he's endured on last week's Friday show. I haven't talked much about Jordan Montgomery, but I don't think he's endured nearly the same level of fan abuse from the Diamondbacks fans, but his season has probably been even worse than Mitch Garver's. But this team today heads to the White House on their off day to meet President Joe Biden and be congratulated and celebrated as the reigning World Series champs. And, man, I don't care what your politics are, but it's got to be cool to head to the White House and be, celebrated as the World Series champs for your team. But maybe the Rangers could have done it on a day when the vibes were better. I'm sure that they'll enjoy that cool experience of, being celebrated by a president as champions. But, I mean, after the last 2 days, you take your off day, you say, all right, look, we're World Series champs. After those 2 losses, I mean, what a contrast in feelings that must be. I mean, to be like, hey, remember when you won the World Series? Yeah, that was fun. We kind of suck right now. The vibes, I cannot remember a World Series visit, but maybe they're all like this. And the World Series hangover gets to a lot of different teams because it is very, very hard to win a World Series, which is why it's so important to keep going for it every year that your window of contention is open. Especially when you have some free agents that you spent big on. Like guys like Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, Nate Eovaldi, that Max Scherzer, Jacob deGrom, who I'll get to a little bit later. If you've got those guys on your roster, you owe it to them and to your fan base to go for it. Now, long term, eventually you do have to kind of balance that attempting to go for it with, prolonging your window, but the Rangers window is only going to be open so long. When you rebuild that fast and you don't have time to build up your farm system into one of the elite farm systems in the game, which the Rangers kind of did do that in a very roundabout way. Some of it was a little bit of luck in lucking into Wyatt Langford. Some of it was a brilliant draft and development win in Evan Carter. I know it hasn't really felt like it for most of this year, but he still is a huge, huge win, even if he never plays another game of Major League Baseball. Getting that month of the regular season of Evan Carter and that playoff run from a 21-year-old hitting 3-hole, a guy who nobody knew who he was. You drafted in the second round of a super weird draft. And not to mention, turned 2 of those other draft picks in a 5-round draft into Jordan Montgomery, who was one of your 2 healthy and dominant starting pitchers that got you to a World Series. And also got you Chris Stratton, who helped. He did help. But that draft looking like an absolutely massive win for the Rangers, especially if Justin Foscue turns into anything like what the Rangers were hoping. Even if he doesn't, still massive haul from that draft. But winning a World Series, as we saw last year, I feel like not all of us learned the right lesson from watching that World Series team and from watching the last, 50-something years of Texas Rangers baseball. The lesson is it's incredibly hard to win a World Series. It is so many different things that have to go right for you. You've got to be good. You got to be smart. You got to be lucky. You got to be vibey. You got to be all of those things. The Rangers were smart when they went and spent big on the market inefficiency. They exploited the market inefficiency of teams not wanting to pay good players what they're worth in free agency. Spending big on Corey Seager and Marcus Semien at a time where the Rangers were not expected to be spending, not expected to be going for these kind of players. It didn't look like they had a whole lot around those guys to supplement them to win now, or at least in year 2 or 3 of those guys' contracts. And you know what? They showed everyone wrong, because they went in and also got Bruce Bochy out of retirement, which, if you can do that, that's also very smart to do. It's very heady in doing. And the Rangers spending a bunch of money buying so many starting pitchers. I mean, heading into 2023 with 7-8 guys you felt good about starting games in the rotation, and knowing that, granted, a lot of them were older. A lot of them did have extensive injury histories, like Jacob deGrom, like Nate Eovaldi, like John Gray, like many other guys in that rotation, and even Andrew Heaney. I mean, almost everybody in that rotation heading into the season, outside of Dunning and Martin Perez, had some kind of extensive injury history, and so many of them got hurt, but the Rangers were still good. They were still good. They were also smart when they made moves like they did on the margins for Nathaniel Lowe, for Jonah Heim, for Adolis Garcia. They were also good at developing their own talent in Evan Carter, in Leody Taveras, who was a 2.5 WAR player, a solid, important contributor to that team. Also sticking with Josh Sborz as long as they did, as many missteps and bumps along the way. Same with Jose Leclerc. And also being smart in drafting and developing well with Josh Young, who was an integral part of that team. They were also lucky. They were lucky that Nate Eovaldi was able to get back and get healthy and get into form at exactly the right time. They were also a little lucky that Max Scherzer was able to come back and be some kind of version of Max Scherzer just on the mound in the postseason. Wasn't his full Max Scherzer self, but still good enough. They were also lucky that they got Wyatt Langford with the 4th pick in that draft, with the 7th worst record in Major League Baseball, the first ever draft lottery. The Rangers kind of lucked into that. No, they very much lucked into that. Might have been definitely the second luckiest thing that happened to the Rangers last year was getting Wyatt Langford. The first, obviously, winning the World Series. And the biggest luck of all was Josh Sborz and Jose Leclerc, who do have great Major League stuff, had shown bits and spurts of, being elite relievers. They'd also shown a lot more of being inconsistent and not elite back-end relievers, but those guys pitching the best baseball of their freaking lives at the right time for a month, just the hottest streak those guys have ever gone on, maybe ever will go on. at the exact right time. And also Aroldis Chapman being good enough and not working himself into too much trouble and getting the Rangers in some very good spots and really just only needing, they probably could have used more, but only having to use 3 elite back-end guys and Bochy pitching them pretty much every day and them pretty much holding up in almost every game they pitched in that playoff run. That's lucky. They also got vibey. The vibes of that team were tremendous in the postseason. I mean, heading into the postseason, we all remember how terrible those vibes were, but the team and the mental fortitude. Now, I think a lot of that is got to be credit to Bruce Bochy and his clubhouse working miracles, and I think also a lot of it is just due to those guys in the room, to the guys who they acquired, to the scouting department of not just scouting the talent, which they did incredibly well, in guys who they traded for, guys who they signed, guys who they drafted and developed, having that kind of team chemistry and culture and getting a bunch of guys that fit with it, but also even guys on the very, very fringes like Austin Hedges. I know on the field he may not have made the biggest difference, but having an Austin Hedges in the clubhouse to bring those vibes up when you're on that cross-country flight, it is not an insignificant difference. Now, I don't think that adding Austin Hedges to this clubhouse would have, fixed the vibes and would make this team above 500 and, maybe leading the AL West by a bunch. I don't think that would make a difference. Now, offensively, he was just about as good as Andrew Knizner this year, but still, the Rangers needed a lot of things to go right, and going for it every chance you get, even when you come up short, has got to be the lesson that the Rangers and Rangers fans learned from 2023. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands. Get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business, and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Now, the Rangers will have some good news, hopefully. Crossing my fingers, knocking on wood, and every kind of other superstition out there. But they will hopefully be getting some good news about their true ace, Jacob deGrom, who will be throwing to live hitters for the first time since April of last year. He will throw a live bullpen to hitters today on Thursday. He was going to throw it on Wednesday, but alas, the Rangers had a day game and they could not move things around enough for Jacob deGrom to throw live BP to hitters. If it had been a night game, then the Rangers would have been able to do that, but alas, that's not how it works. So Jacob deGrom will stay behind in Arlington, throw live BP about 20 pitches to hitters. First time that he will be facing live hitters since he had that surgery on his magical elbow that blew out after 6 glorious starts for the Rangers. It will be a better sign for him, he said, of seeing exactly how his stuff is playing against hitters, because that's the main thing, is, it can feel good out of your hand in bullpens and, sound good hitting the catcher's mitt, but until you see how hitters are seeing it, you don't really know exactly how it is. So deGrom will miss the trip to the White House because he is rehabbing, which unfortunately is kind of fitting for Jacob deGrom's tenure with the Rangers. But we'll see. We'll see what exact news comes out after this. He said he is feeling good. The timeline is still towards the end of August, maybe beginning of September for his return. I think the latest of that initial schedule right around the trade deadline when CY said that deGrom was about 30 to 40 days away. I think the 40 days away would have put him at somewhere around September 7th. So hopefully that is the timeline. What it's seeming like right now is that he is going to throw this BP to the hitters, and then after that, we will get some kind of news, hopefully about a rehab assignment, exactly how and where and when he is going to throw that rehab assignment. Not entirely sure. How many starts, whether it's going to be in Frisco or in Round Rock, not entirely sure. How many pitches he's going to throw in that start, also, again, not entirely sure. He's been throwing since around July, so he's been throwing about 3 weeks or so. I think that was the first time that he picked up a baseball and started actually, throwing off a mound. Maybe that was in, mid-July. So we'll see exactly what that timeline is. And if it ends up mattering for the 2024 Rangers, that was always the worry with DeGrom and with Mahle, and also with Scherzer of, can the Rangers hold on in a difficult AL West race, or what we thought would be a difficult AL West race, long enough for those guys coming back to matter, so the Rangers didn't have to go and spend a lot of farm capital that they don't necessarily have, because even though ESPN ranked the Rangers farm system 29th, I don't think it's 29th. It's probably in the bottom 10, bottom 15 if you're feeling really high on Alejandro Rosario Rosario and also Kumar Rocker like I am, and also very high on Sebastian Walcott like I am. But still, they're not a top 10 farm system without Wyatt Langford and Evan Carter at the top of that farm system. That's okay, because they're in the big leagues, which is where they should be, and this team is going to pretty much look like this for the next few years. That's the good and bad part of this year and last year. It's like, oh, this is what the Rangers lineup is going to look like for years to come. That was a good thing. That was a great thing after 2023. Like, oh my gosh, this lineup that just lit everybody on fire. And even though, left field was kind of a black hole offensively, DH was, Mitch Garver was great, but he's gone. And center field was, not the best offensive production, but Leote was a fine hitter. If that's your 9th best player in your lineup, that's a pretty decent lineup. And everybody else was under contract for multiple seasons after that. At least 3 seasons for pretty much everybody that was an integral part of this lineup. And then with the offensive fall off of this year, it's, oh no, this is the lineup for the next few years. Now, granted, offense has been down around Major League Baseball this year. It is not just a Texas Rangers problem. It is not just that this offense specifically is stinky dookie garbage compared to what they were last year. The Braves, who were one of the best offense we've ever seen, completely fell off a cliff this year. Completely fell off a cliff with basically the exact same hitters. Granted, they've had a few more injuries to their lineup than the Rangers have. Rangers lost Josh Young for 5 games, however many it ended up being. And then plugged in Josh Smith, who was pretty darn good, but everybody else pretty much fell off a cliff. Some of them fell off several cliffs. But still, maybe this is just a 1-year sample size. Maybe it's not. But the Rangers will have some questions about how to fit everybody into the lineup, or who to justify starting where. I mean, right now in the outfield /DH, you've got 5 guys for 4 spots. You got Josh Smith, because I don't think Smith is going to take Young's spot as the everyday third baseman. That seems fairly entrenched. Shortstop? Nope, that's pretty much settled. Second base? Nope, that's pretty much settled. First base? Nope, that's pretty much settled. I don't think Smith is going to start learning catcher. But left field, center field, right field, DH, you've got Josh Smith, you got Wyatt Langford, you got Leote Taveras, you got Evan Carter, and you got Adolis Garcia. And who's going to go where? I don't know. Evan Carter may not be able to hit lefties, so maybe you're going to have to do some platooning with him and Wyatt Langford in center field. Maybe Leote Taveras is the odd man out and he's the bench guy. And Josh Smith is your everyday left fielder, and Adolis is your everyday right fielder, and maybe Wyatt's DHing on the days that, I don't know. You've got a lot of different choices there, and I don't envy Chris Young and Bruce Bochy having to make those decisions. And there's not really a whole lot of help coming from the farm system in terms of bats. Now, Dustin Harris has been on a little bit of a heater basically since the month of the calendar flipped to July. And that is a great thing because he was a guy who I was really disappointed in his season. Is a guy who I had very high hopes for as recently as a couple of years ago, but he just hasn't quite progressed like I thought. Foscue has not been able to, crack this lineup like I thought he would. I mean, he had every chance with how bad this lineup's been to get in there as a DH or left field or occasionally first base option to hit lefties, and he was not good in the major leagues this year. Guys like Davis Wenzel, who had plenty of opportunities to hit the big league level and just could not quite do it. There were chances there, but in terms of the Rangers, top prospects of guys who could be impact everyday major leaguers of improving this lineup, I don't think Sebastian Walcott's joining this lineup anytime soon. He's having a great season in Hickory, but unless he makes good on his prediction, his hope for himself of being a big leaguer, making his big league debut as a teenager, which, by the way, would be next year as his last year as a teenager. And if he does that, that would be downright incredible. Maybe he's your everyday right fielder. Maybe Evan's your everyday center fielder. Maybe Josh Smith is your Michael Young 2011 super utility guy, and Langford's your left fielder. I don't know. That'd be a huge ask for Sebastian Walcott, who, is just in high A this year. Just in high A, raking as an 18-year-old, 4 years younger than the average player in that league. But still, this kind of is the lineup. And, this is kind of where they are right now. They're in a weird spot. Maybe this year is just a fluke. Maybe it's a sign that last year was a fluke. I don't know. You don't know. They don't know. All we know is that right now, things aren't exactly ideal, but hey, no matter what happens with this Silver Boot regular season, no matter what happens if the Astros go on and do the unthinkable and win a World Series this year and add a second legitimate title, and unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to have that over them, which is a nice little, thing to poke them with when they hurt our feelings on the baseball diamond. But no matter what shapes up, whether this team was just a flash in the pan, whether their long-term plans did go up in smoke, and no matter what happens with Ray's checkbook this offseason, if he actually wants to supplement this team and make them do what he said he wanted them to do and be contenders for the long haul, none of it changes what happened last year. Can't forget about that. We absolutely cannot forget about that. And if you kind of put yourself in that emotional state of where I think most of us were heading into that Game 6 in Houston, just let it watch and unfold, and maybe our hearts will be broken. Or maybe, just maybe, things will turn out at least a little bit more like last year. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy World Series champion Texas Rangers baseball.